border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
Grant Wells in the gun, takes the snap, fakes the handoff, he takes off left, and he is all by his lonesome. Nobody within 10 yards, and Wells waltzes in for the touchdown. Marshall 16, Appalachian State 7. Grant Wells 12 yards for the score.
Next play, I love it, Brew. Liberty versus Western Kentucky. Terrell Pigram throws it up to Craig Bird Jr., who catches it over the defender for the touchdown. Woo! That's the way to get up there, boy.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. I got Trace along with me here, and we are about to wrap up I guess you got to call it a historic win for Marshall. It's been a long, long time since they've beaten a ranked opponent, and they did that. So you got to call it historic, I guess. It doesn't matter that it was, over another mid-major team. Regardless, it's a top 25 win, and neither you or I thought that was going to happen. And I'm going to push that a step further. If you would have told me that Marshall would have held Appalachian State to 7 points, I would have signed you up for the loony bin, because I did not think that would happen at all. Get into this. Appalachian State comes to town. We all know their pedigree. If you listen to our preview episode, you know that they've been really good for a really long time. They generally just don't lose games. They might trip up here and there, but they're a 10-plus win ball club every single year, it seems like. But enter the herd. Riding high off of that week one, or game one, I guess you want to call it, win over Eastern Kentucky. We didn't really know what we had in the herd. And we really didn't know how they would ultimately match up with a better quality opponent. And I think they took it up a notch, definitely on the defensive level. I don't know how I can sit here with a straight face and say you step it up a notch after a shutout. But yeah. I think they stepped it up a notch against Appalachian State. I don't think too many people would disagree with me. So, Trace, just from the outset, you were at the game. I watched it on television. Actually, I was up in Daytona Beach yesterday, and I watched it on TV. So, made a little road trip and got to watch the game. So, you were there. Talk about the atmosphere in the stadium. Talk about the just everything surrounding the game. I know there were Appalachian State fans there. I don't know if you interacted with any of them, but just talk about that before we get into stats and whatnot.
Yeah, this was one heck of a day in Huntington. You could definitely say that. I mean, it was awesome. From top to bottom, it was awesome. I mean, the crowd, honestly, like they say they only allow 12,000 some people. There seemed like more than that there to me. Like, it seemed like I felt like there was 15,000 there. Like, I feel like they might have just maybe slightly changed those numbers up just so they didn't go over, or announced actually less than what they're actually were, so they wouldn't get in trouble for it. Because, like, there was a lot more people there than that first game. I mean, I'm just saying. And App State had a lot of people there, too, which, I mean, I tweeted my opinion on a certain App State fandom, so I'm not going to get into that on here. But, no, I mean, it was great. The game day experience and stuff, I mean, even for a socially distanced crowd and everything, and like the whole situation, it was solid. I mean, people were very energetic, very into it. It was loud as it could be for that amount of people. It was just awesome. I mean, it was just that's what I said on the preview, is like, it was just a must-win type game for the program. Everybody, everything involved with Marshall football needed that win. The coaching staff needed that win. The players needed that win. The fans needed that win. Marshall's brand needed that win. Every part of the program needed that win. And they were able to pull it out very impressively. And we'll got way more thoughts on that later. But it was spectacular. It's one of those games that you're going to probably remember forever, honestly, just because it was so crazy from start to finish. And the fact that Marshall was able to pull it out when a lot of people were questioning them heading in, it was justifiably so, to win a big game, myself included. I have no problem admitting I was wrong there, because I was hoping I would be wrong. I said my whole premise was they had to show me they could win a game like this. They finally showed me. So there you go. It took 17 years to finally beat a ranked team, so I'm happy.
But it happened.
Yep.
And look, I couldn't be happier to be wrong too. I was ready to take all the smoke from anybody that wanted to give it to me after the game and after Marshall was able to secure the win, because I'm like you. I was like, look, I just needed to see it. I'm not saying that Marshall was a bad team or they couldn't get it done, but nobody in 17 years had seen it get done. So at that point, through that duration of time, I think it's okay to be like, well, you're going to show me you can do it. So they did. Let's talk about some general stats. Appalachian State, Marshall, total yardage. Marshall edges out App State in total yardage, 379 to 364. Edges out App State in time of possession, 3159 to 2801. Appalachian State actually gets the edge in first downs, 26 to 22, which I'll give you a little asterisk on that in a minute. And Marshall wins the turnover battle 2-1. So just like we were talking about in previous games, this is not like Appalachian State just turned the ball over and Marshall managed to sneak out with a win. Look, Marshall won this game. No other way to slice it. Appalachian State didn't give it away. The only thing that you can say that was a miscue, really, was the missed field goal.
Yeah.
The kid who had the ball punched out on his way to the end zone, which was a beautiful play call, by the way. Yeah. But the kid that had the ball punched out, that's not a slip up. That's not a miscue. That's a fabulous defensive play by Marshall. That's not a giveaway. That's a takeaway. Okay. That's the difference. That's the difference. So for all these headlines that keep saying, App State miscues or App State giveaways it's Marshall won the game. They gave up a touchdown on App State's opening drive and then nothing. That's it. They had one long run that would have went for a touchdown, but the guy was down. And then that's it. So about those first downs, Marshall did have 11 penalties, and I saw a graphic during the game that said at least, I don't know if any more accounted for this, but at that time when I saw the graphic, it said 7 of Marshall's penalties resulted in Appalachian State first downs. Yeah. So Marshall was actually moving the chains for App State at certain points in the game, and really specifically right there before halftime when, we'll talk about Stephen Gilmore a little bit later, but boy, were they picking on him. And I'll tell you, you might have been able to call PI on the first one, but the second one to me was an absolute garbage call, and good on him for, basically instantly redeeming himself and stopping that drive right before halftime. So anyway, Marshall wins the Big Four 3-1, and they were just edged out in the first down. So look, it all totals up to a 17-7 Marshall victory. And like I said before, if you would have told me A, Marshall holds App State to 7 points, I would have told you were crazy. B, if you tell me Marshall wins the game only by scoring 17 points, I would have also told you you're crazy. But both happened. So we mentioned the first ranked win over a ranked opponent in 17-ish years. Of course, the last time that happened was when Marshall went into Manhattan, Kansas, and beat Kansas State, who was number 6 in the country at that time, back in 2003. So how many generations of freshmen that have graduated have gone through Marshall before that's happened? A lot of kids have come and gone on and off campus at Marshall between ranked opponent wins. I got a question for you before we talk about phases of the game. Is this Doc Holliday's signature win?
Well, I was thinking that earlier. I was thinking about that because I knew it was probably going to be brought up on here, and I think it is. I mean, it remains to be seen how good App State will actually end up being this year, but I think they're absolutely going to be just like they always are. I mean, I think they're going to be right there for a Sun Belt championship. I mean, Sun Belt's a pretty good league, but I mean, I think they're going to be right there. I mean, they literally returned pretty much every starter from a 13-1 team last year. They had a quarterback that had a 24-3 career record before this game. Yeah.
Returning Sun Belt Player of the Year. I mean, they have weapons.
They have a bunch of weapons. They got 2 or 3 really good running backs. An O-line that was getting all the headlines. Defensive players, Gene Truck pick in the league. I mean, they got NFL players on that team, and Marshall still beat them and held them 7 points, and it was a ranked win. You can say whatever you want about, the Big Ten's not even in it yet, or the SEC or whatever, but that is a legit top 25 caliber team from the group of 5. That's just what they are, and Marshall beat them. I mean, Marshall really should have put up more points than they did. They could have won that game by 3 or 4 touchdowns, honestly, if they had just had a couple drives go a little better But, I mean, you can't worry about the margin of victory. They still won by 10 points. They won by more points than they gave up. So, and when you can say that, that's always solid, especially against a team like App State who was ranked. So, I mean, just if you want to look at it just based on the highest ranked team that Doc's ever beaten, yeah, then they are the biggest signature win that he's had. I mean, we don't know how they're going to end up, but for right now, just because it's a ranked team, it was his first ranked win as a head coach at Marshall, I think you got to say it is.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people go back and point to Purdue as being an awesome game and how great that environment was. But at the end of the day, that was a 2-win Purdue team. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but still, that does not lower the pride that Marshall has in beating that team, and it doesn't lower the environment that was in Jones C. Edwards Stadium that day. It doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, this is still a top 25 win. Whether or not they lose them all from here on out, it remains that they were number 23 in the country when Marshall beat them. Now, 2 weeks from now, or let me look at that again. Yeah, 3 weeks from now-ish, Appalachian State's going to face Louisiana, which is basically going to be the game of the year in the Sun Belt. So that's the measuring stick game, I guess, for both of those schools to see where they actually lie in the Sun Belt pecking order. But look, you'd be out of your mind to think that App State couldn't theoretically run the table in the Sun Belt and completely win that conference, because they could. So here we go. Let's talk about the offense. This is where we're gonna. I mean, we know what the defense is. We're gonna get to that, but let's talk about the offense. A couple of points I want to make. I know you've got some points, and I said going in that Marshall. One of my keys to victory for this game, if you'll remember in the preview, was that Marshall was going to have to outrush and outpossess Appalachian State. And I said they were going to have to outpossess them by more than a minute and outrush them by more than a yard. Yeah. And they did the outrushing part pretty well. Time of possession was closer than I thought it was going to be, honestly. But this offensive line absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage. And late in the game, they kept moving the chains on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, picking up, and that's not something that Appalachian State is used to have happening to them. Nope. A team running down their throat and continuing to move the chains, eat the clock. I mean, this offensive line is probably the MVP of the game, which is why they were my 200 proof players along with the running backs moving in. Proved to be right on that point as well. Here's something else that we saw. As Herd fans and for our purposes on this podcast and on the Moonshine Throwdown Twitter account, we saw that Grant Wells is still developing as a quarterback. Okay, he is not NFL ready right now, but he's not as bad as a lot of folks thought he might look against this really good Appalachian State defense. Look, Marshall could have lost this game in years past with average quarterback play like we saw from Grant Wells yesterday. But it just speaks to how good the offensive line is, how good the running backs are, and how unbelievably good the defense is. An average quarterback day. The man didn't even throw for a touchdown pass. Yep. I mean, and Marshall still won the game. So Wells is still developing. And I made this point earlier on Twitter with one of the fans says that, he's not confident yet in Marshall. Well, I don't know what else you've got to see, but my reply to that was, this just proves to me what I already thought Marshall was. A team with a really good run game, a really good defense, and a quarterback that is developing on the fly. So as he gets better, Marshall becomes better. One kind of negative thing I've got to toss out there, because it did happen. There was a critical dropped touchdown pass by Brock Thompson that I thought was going to come back to haunt Marshall big time. And ultimately it didn't. But we saw several drop passes, and on 3rd down, I think it was a 3rd down play. Corey Gamage dropped a pass that could have kept the chains moving, but none were bigger than the dropped pass in the end zone. I mean, I don't know if the kid got a finger on it. I saw the replay a couple of times. I couldn't really tell, but it really looked like it hit Brock Thompson right in the hands, and you just got to catch that. I mean, you got to catch that. That was a worry of ours about Brock coming in. Would those get reduced? And if that would have come back to be a difference maker, wow, that would have been bad. But luckily it was not. I gotta say this, and I think some people, including myself at the time, were questioning not necessarily the decision, but maybe the play call. 4th and 3 on the App State 14 with 14 minutes to go in the game. and you run a pass play that really looked like a broken play from the get-go. It looked like a bad snap. The guys really didn't even know what to do, and Grant Wells just kind of ended up throwing it into the back of the end zone. You're 4th and 3 on the 14. I've got no problem with going for it on 4th down. For a long time, we've been chastising Doc about his, lack of I don't know. You know what I want to say, but I don't want to say it. lack of balls, I guess, to, try to close the game out. He wants to play the clock game, and he went for it because 3 points there moves you to 20, which means 2 App State touchdowns still could lose you the game. Okay, so I got no problem with going for it. What I do have a problem with is you've got the Conference USA MVP, a stellar offensive line. You need 3 yards. Go get it. Give it to the man. Give it to number 20 and put it in his gut. Let him try to get you 3 yards. That's the only thing. I give props to Doc for going for it on 4th down. I'm sure a lot of people are like, what are we doing? But he's punted so many times or kicked the field goal so many times, and we've seen Marshall like that be a difference, 3 points versus 6. So I got no problem with that. You got a few notes you want to talk about the offense before we get into stats? Because I'd love to hear.
Well, I think you got to, looking at the offense, I think you got to talk about Grant Wells a little bit because, he came back down to earth, and I think everybody knew that was going to, well, if you were realistic, I think you knew that was going to happen because he's going against a defense that's got multiple probably NFL draft picks on it. He's throwing at corners that will be playing on Sunday next year. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And, he started the first quarter especially, he was pretty shaky. He almost had a couple interceptions, then had that one interception. But after that, though, he did rise to the challenge. He started playing much better after that. He started, I think, 3 of 9 passing or something like that. And then he ended up, 8 of 16 or something. So, he got better as the game went on. He started hitting, more throws. That one to Brock Thompson. Yeah, now, when I saw it first, I wasn't sure how close it actually was, but, that was a great throw. And, the catch should have theoretically been made, but I mean, I understand it a little bit just because he was kind of falling down towards the back of the end zone. It would have been a tough catch, but he should have had it, and that would have been a big touchdown. But I mean, there's been way more egregious drops than that, so I'm not going to hold that too much against him. But that was a great throw there. He also had another throw on a 3rd down and short that Corey Gammage just flat out dropped. It was a 5-yard route. He just flat out dropped it. Would have been a 1st down. So he had a couple of drops like that. Had a few errant throws, but I mean, like you said, it's the competition. It's just so much different compared to Eastern Kentucky. I mean, Eastern Kentucky didn't present anything to what Appalachian State did yesterday. So, I mean, Grant Wells I'll save more of it for his grade coming up, but he had a pretty good game, honestly, and then he ran the ball well. So, I mean, he did all right, especially considering how he started. And then you just can't take away – you can't say enough good things about the running game. I mean, what else can you say about the running game, how good it was? I mean, over 200 yards against that defense. I mean, everybody was talking about how great Appalachian State's O-line is, how dominant their running game is, and this and that. And then Marshall goes out and absolutely outclasses them in that area, in that category. They took them out. It was awesome. Brendan Knox, what a game. One of the best games he's had maybe in his career. Just awesome. 28 carries. I mean, just a workhorse performance. Awesome stuff. I don't even think they allowed 1 sack. So, I mean, this O-line might end up being the best that Doc's ever had. I mean, I'm very vocal in the 2014 O-line being the best, but this one, depending on how this season goes, might even eclipse that one. So, we'll see. But the offense, save some more tidbits, I guess, and some more stats for the grades, but the offense obviously did enough to win because they won. So, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, let's talk about stats. Grant Wells, 11 of 25, 165 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. That was a tip ball. Great play by the App State defender. A couple of other balls that were dangerously close to being picked off. Yep. But I said multiple times with the folks I was watching the game with, look, this is the difference between 2020 Grant Wells and 2022 Grant Wells because those same throws, they land 3 rows high in the stadium. They don't go right at the sideline. They're not even close to being a play being made on them. So that comes along with the development of the quarterback. You live to fight another day, and slowly but surely he will learn that. 59.4 QBR, 6 rushes, 43 yards, 1 touchdown. Beautiful 12-yard touchdown. Very Chad Pennington-esque. All we were missing was the horrible ball fake that Pennington had with the Jets several years back. Brendan Knox proving once again he is Conference USA's best running back. 28 carries, 138 yards, 1 touchdown, 4.9 yards per carry, 49 yards on the Herd's opening scoring drive. I mean, I'm honestly shocked that he didn't garner more carries, because as the fourth quarter went along, and I thought, okay, man, this just seems like the time that Brendan Knox is going to get 10 carries, because he's the best guy, best back on the field. The offensive line's opening holes. Let's close out the clock here. But I'm going to lead into that by saying Sheldon Evans, 10 carries, only 33 yards, but the carries he got late in the game shows the trust that they have in this young running back, because it was Brendan Knox on the sideline. And I'm thinking that it might have been a little bit of, well, look, we really don't absolutely have to have Knox in the game. We have a 2-score lead. Why risk it? If it draws within a score, maybe it's Knox on the field, not Evans. But Evans was on the field late, protecting the ball, moving the chains. A lot of trust is being shown every single week as we progress in Sheldon Evans. Xavier Gaines, leading receiver yardage-wise, 2 catches, 68 yards, and drew a huge PI call late in the game, to which I turned into a GIF of him wobbling his shoulders and smiling at the scoreboard, which was really cool. Brock Thompson, leading receiver receptions-wise, 3 receptions, 37 yards, and Willie Johnson, 2 receptions, 33 yards, and a crazy, wild tipped catch.
Crazy.
That when I saw that, I thought, okay, this is Marshall's day. And then a couple plays later, it was a tipped interception, and I thought, okay, maybe it's not Marshall's day. So offensively, you talked about a lot of different things. We see Grant Wells continue to spread the ball around. We see Brendan Knox continue to pile up yards. He's just a handful of yards now from entering into Marshall's top 10 all-time leading rushers. So something to keep an eye on. That could happen against Western Kentucky if Marshall doesn't get another game between now and then. Kind of crazy to think it's been in basically a season and now 3 quarters since it was a half and now a couple of games. So he's like 50 yards away from being in the Herd's all-time top 10 in, less than 2 seasons. Pretty amazing. All right, it's time to talk defense. And I don't think anybody could say anything negative about this defense. Herd holds Appalachian State to 96 total rushing yards 1 week after they pile up 308 yards against Charlotte. They had 2 backs go over 100 yards, and this week their leading rusher had 57 yards on 12 carries. The other back had 12 carries, and it was like 40 yards. I mean, they did a phenomenal job in the run game. And to the credit of J.C. Price, Brad Lambert, those guys dialed up an excellent game plan. The Herd did get gashed a little bit in the pass game. Couple big plays here. Ultimately didn't really do any damage other than, 1 touchdown. And it shows how deep Marshall is going in the secondary. They're evolving every week. Their corners are starting to play with more confidence. Their safeties are swirling around the ball. I mean, it's getting to be pretty awesome to see. It was a fairly sizable question mark in our eyes coming in, was how the secondary would be. We had faith in the D-line. We had faith in the linebackers. That's proving to be a strength. Tavante Beckett, he is one of the top, if not the top linebacker in Conference USA. Once again, Stephen Gilmore showed so much moxie bouncing back from those 2 huge PI calls from App State right before the half, and then getting that interception to kill that drive. And, Derek Pitts, Najee Johnson, and Brandon Drayton. Wow, the trio of safeties. What a game they had. And speaking of Brandon Drayton, welcome back to the Herd. Debut after being gone for a long time for, documented reasons that we don't need to get into. But ultimately, he is back in good graces, and deservedly so. And man, did he have the play of the week, the play of the game, and potentially the play of the season for Marshall. Yeah. That peanut punch on the 4th down was amazing. Yeah. Textbook play. Your heart goes out to that kid from App State, but those plays happen. I mean, they happen. You got to get over it. I know it sucks, but that loss does not fall on him. They also missed a field goal. They let several other opportunities get away. It's not all on him. That was just a fabulous play by Brandon Drayton, and I tweeted it now, and I still believe it after I've seen the replay several times. The way that the freaking ball stays in bounds and basically bounces right into the arms of Najee Johnson. At that point, I knew, okay, this is definitely the Herd's day. Because any other time that ball bounces out of bounds or goes out on the half-yard line and whatever, and then you're kind of behind the 8 ball, but App State 4 of 13 on third downs, a big key to victory for me in the preview. Herd did a phenomenal job on third down. What do you got about the defense this week, Trace? I know you've got to be elated, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking earlier what I was going to say in regards to the defense, and honestly, I think you could say this is maybe the best defensive performance Marshall's had since the Bob Pruitt era. I mean, honestly, like, I'm serious when I say that. I mean, there's not one that I can think of that comes to my mind in the last 10, 15 years or so that has been better than this. I mean, this is a team that had so many starters back from a 13-1 season last year, that has a sensational quarterback, a great running game, a great O-line, a team that put up almost 40 points a game last year, a team that put up 35 in the rain last week before this game. They held them to 7 points. I mean, you couldn't even come up with that in your wildest dreams, probably, that Marshall would hold that team to 7 points. I mean, it's not to say that we didn't think the defense was good, because obviously the defense is really good, but nobody saw that coming. I mean, it was just sensational. I mean, the run defense, oh my Lord, how good were they? I mean, that team that ran for 300-plus yards the week before didn't even get 100 yards in this game. Less than 3 yards per carry as an average. Just awesome stuff. I mean, nobody expected that. I mean, even if you picked Marshall to win, you probably didn't expect them to hold them to that few yards rushing. I mean, it was the whole thing. All Appalachian State's offensive line, their running game they're going to impose their will. They're going to, they want to establish the run and whatever. Well, they didn't. And Marshall deserves all the credit in the world for that. And then the secondary, yeah, there were some issues early on, especially with pass interferences. But, I mean, and I'll say this, I'll save a little bit more on Gilmore later, but this whole thing, the defense was really good. I mean, you can't take anything away from them. Secondary ended up rising to the challenge. I mean, yeah, they had some pretty egregious pass interferences that were deserved at times in the first half, but there's also a couple that was out there that I just thought were bad calls. I now know why people complain about Big 12 refs so much. I get it. I get it, because like they wanted to be the stars of the show. They wanted to call every single thing that was out there. I didn't like that. Doc didn't like it because Doc got penalized by the refs. So, I mean, you don't let them play. But besides that, I mean, yeah, few questionable calls, pass interference calls. There were a few that were deserved. But outside of that, Lord, you can't say a single thing negative about that defense. I mean, one of the best defensive performances in program history, in my opinion.
Yeah, and look, let's be honest. They overcame some really bad calls. I mean, when's the last time you saw defensive holding get called on a running play? But that was called against Marshall. Several unnecessary roughness calls against Marshall. There was a particular play, I think it was Jalen McLean-Sapp picked it off kind of over the guy and tips the ball, and they called pass interference.
It was a bang call at best.
I mean, I don't get that. So, look, I'm not trying to blame the referees, but I will say there were some other opportunities granted to Appalachian State. I mean, they made some pretty ticky-tack calls in certain situations, and things that you don't see. I cannot tell you when the last time I saw defensive holding on a run play, but we saw it. So that is something that Marshall was able to overcome, and that's something in years past that would have sunk a Herd team. Even 2 pass interference calls, and we saw like 5, So I don't know exactly what the number was, but there were a lot of questionable calls, and it wasn't all one-sided. Marshall got a call here and there, but I don't know. Tavante Beckett, leading tackler, holy moly, 16 tackles, 8 solo. Steve Cotton tweeted that it was the most tackles in a game by a Marshall defender since Chase Hancock back in 2018 when he had 18 tackles. Tavante Beckett just tackles dudes. That's I mean, Mr. Consistency. I've called him that, and we called Chase Hancock that, and now it's such an earned name. Derek Pitts, second leading tackler, 9 tackles, 6 solo, 1 pass defended. Stephen Gilmore, 7 tackles, 4 solo, 2 passes defended, 1 interception after those 2 terrible PI calls. And then Brandon Drayton, there were some guys that had more tackles than him, but he had the play of the game without a doubt. 4 tackles, 2 solo, and 1 huge forced fumble. All in all, defensive effort was astounding. And I don't want to ruin anything, but I'm putting you on record. You said it's not an A+ effort if you don't get a shutout. Sorry, it's just not. I want to know if that's changing its tune a little bit this week.
Oh, no.
We'll find out in grades.
I can't even remotely go with that.
We'll find out in grades. It's time to talk special teams now. I said in my keys to victory that we had to see airtight special teams by Marshall, and we saw basically airtight special teams by Marshall. I'm starting off with my very favorite new thing to say when I'm talking to you. Kickoff coverage. It was excellent. Again, 16.8 yards per kick is what App State was limited to. The herd was perfect on kicks, field goals, and extra points. Evans averaged 21 yards per kick return with a long of 34, and Robert Lefevre had a lower average day, 38.6 yards per punt, but some of that had to do with the field position and where they were and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking on the ESPN app, and they say that he didn't have anything inside the 20, but I'm sorry, he put one out of bounds on the App State 12. That actually happened. So I don't know where they're getting that from. But he had one that went down on the 12. Shane Chuchi 1-of-1 on field goals, long of 29 yards, and 2-of-2 on extra points. We said it in the preview that when you're talking about the edge between herd kickers and App State kickers, you got to give the edge to Marshall because Chuchi made his kick. The App State kicker missed his kick against Charlotte, and it was the same thing all over again. Chuchi made his. The App State kicker missed his. Special teams, what do you got for me?
A lot of good stuff. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff, and like you said, airtight's a pretty good analogy, a pretty good description for that. Because I mean, there wasn't anything on the special teams that I can think of that cost them or hurt them in any way. I mean,
one penalty, I think one holding penalty on a kick return, on a fairly long kick return. I think Evans almost got it out to midfield or something like that, and it brought him back half the distance to the goal. That's the only thing I can recall.
I remember that now. And even on that, I mean, just think about the opening kickoff of the game. That set the whole tone right there. Evans returns it really far. They get 15 extra yards with a face mask. I mean, Talik Keaton had a pretty good punt return at one point. And then, of course, Lefevre, I mean, he didn't have to have a huge game just because he didn't really need a real booming day of punting. It's just where the positions, the situations in which he was punting, they didn't need to be 70-yard boomers. So, I mean, he had a solid day. I mean, of course, and the kickoff coverage was really good. I was watching that the whole game, and I feel like App State barely got it out to the 20 or 25 at all this game. I feel like it was very few times that they actually did get it out there. So, what a turn of events that has been from this season to last season. So, hopefully that all ends up staying the same, staying on course. But yeah, I mean, special teams were really good again, which I'll save the exact grade for it later on, but very, very good day.
Look, another week, another solid special teams effort. It's becoming a pattern and a great pattern at that. It's something that you just absolutely have to have because special teams can absolutely kill you, even with a great offensive day and a great defensive day. It's something we say over and over that too many fans take for granted. You just expect your punter to go out there and perform well. You expect your kicker to go out there and make field goals. And that stuff's not easy. There's a reason that it's hard to find good kickers. It's because it's hard. So, what do you got, Trace? Late breaking news. What do you got, Trace? Say it.
Number 25, baby, the herd. Number 25, AP poll. Let's go.
Fresh out of the AP poll, Trace is checking his phone as I'm talking, and the herd has landed at number 25 in the country. Here we go.
Shame on the coaches, Paul. What are they thinking? Shame on them.
I was going to get to that in my final thoughts, but I was not going to interrupt your happiness. The herd is ranked, folks, 25th in the country.
Yes, sir.
All right. So after all that, what do we know about the herd after 2 games, Trace?
We know they're ranked 25th. That's what we know. we know they're a top 25 team. We know that they have a legit chance to win the conference this year. They have a legit chance to potentially stay ranked. I mean, I don't see how you can take them out. I mean, if they're in right now, I don't see how you can take them out of the rankings especially if they keep winning. I mean, even when the Big Ten starts playing or whatever, it's going to be tough to take them out. But I mean, they've been off to an excellent start. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better 2 games to start. I mean, 59-0, perfect game against Eastern Kentucky as far as I'm concerned, and then 17-7 against a top 5 Group of 5 program in the country. A ranked team, beating a ranked team for the first time in 17 years. What more could you have asked for in the first 2 games? I mean, you got to be stoked about that, and you got to be stoked. And I said about this game, if Marshall wins this game, I'm not going to be pumping any brakes, and I'm not pumping any brakes anymore. I expect, very, very big things now. And that's what winning those types of games result in, is it leads to more expectations. So it's great that they won this game, but now fans are going to be like, all right, we got to get to this championship. We got to get back to this championship game and win it. That's what has to happen. That's what fans are going to be expecting. They got a big check mark off of the bucket list when they got a top 25 win, but now they won a championship. So if they could do that, man, that'd be a heck of a good start, or a heck of a good way for Doc, especially because this is his last guaranteed year on his contract. So this would be huge for him, and it'd be huge for the program. So, and that's the thing about this game, as I also tweeted too, is this could be a potentially could be a program changing win, because Marshall hasn't had a win like this in a long, long time. They haven't beaten one of these high caliber teams in a long, long time. And usually, and it just seemed like a lot of things, the bad breaks that would go against Marshall, they were going for Marshall yesterday. The fumble, the missed field goal, the batted balls, the this, the that. Like, they actually had things going in their, luck. Some things were just flat out lucky, but usually those things go against Marshall. So, maybe the tides have turned. Maybe 2020 is so crazy that Marshall's going to start getting lucky in football games. I mean, it just seems like, and you can say whatever you want, that you have to make your own luck, and that luck's built off a skill or whatever you want to call it, but luck plays a role in games as well, and sometimes Marshall's been unlucky. And yesterday, yeah, they had several things that went against them, but they had quite a bit of luck as well, and that really helped them. I mean, you can't put a price on that. So great win, great start to the season. You just got to be so stoked right now, as if you're a fan.
Yeah, if you're a Marshall fan, you've got to be feeling really good. And you're right. Now the games that count are coming in. You're going to open with, if no other games get scheduled either this week or next weekend, you've got a 2-week bye. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you've got a 2-week bye heading in to the Moonshine Throwdown in Bowling Green, Kentucky on October 10th. So you better be ready. If you don't get a game, you may be a little rusty, but you're a ranked team now. But here's what I really know about Marshall after 2 games. What I thought they were coming into the season has not changed. They're going to rely heavily on a run game, heavily on the offensive line play to keep their quarterback clean and open holes for their running backs, and they're going to rely on stellar defensive play to get them through games. As Wells gets better, so will Marshall. So they could be a completely different team in a month versus where they are now, and they're already a top 25 team right now. Average quarterback play can beat a top 25 team if you're Marshall this year. You just saw it. Grant Wells didn't light the world on fire, but he didn't, really hinder the herd effort. He had 1 interception. Big deal. It ultimately didn't account for anything, but the man had 0 passing touchdowns, and the herd beat a top 25 team. Now, on the flip of that, if you're a Conference USA offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, now you've got to be thinking, holy crap. What are we going to do? This Marshall defense is really stout. How do we attack them? One of the better running games in the G5 couldn't do squat. They gave up a little bit against one of the better passing games in the G5, but ultimately they got 7 points on the board, and Marshall really didn't play clean football. 11 penalties for over 100 yards, and it still ultimately didn't help Appalachian State. So what I know about Marshall is what I already know about Marshall. It's just keep winning and go with your strengths. It's grades time, Trace. It is grades time. Quarterback grade for the Appalachian State game. What do you got for Grant Wells?
Yeah, I kind of pondered this one for a while because, like, I was going to be a little more harsh on it, not harsh, but like I would have been a little more harsher than what my grade ended up. But I ended up settling for a B-, and I think that that's fair. I mean, you could have maybe made a case for a B, or you could have made a case for a C, but like I think B- is fair. I mean, if you look at the numbers, 11 of 25, that's under 50%, but he did start 3 of 9, so like that had a lot to do with that. He had no touchdown passes, had the one interception. But on the flip side of that, he also had a very impressive rushing touchdown. Actually had a better QBR than a guy that is very heralded on the other end, Zach Thomas. 59.4 QBR to 45.2 QBR advantage. Had 6 carries for 43 yards as well. Ran the ball really well, very effectively. He shook off the early rust pretty well. Started, it was good stuff. And that one throw to Xavier Gaines was really big. That drive was huge. That 60-some yard play to Gaines, and then he ran in the next play. Huge stuff right there. That was the drive that really solidified the fact that Marshall was probably going to win that game. That was what started it. And then the peanut punch basically finished it. But that was a great drive. Wells really made some plays when it counted. A little rusty, a little erratic. It was bad, a couple bad throws. And he did have that one throw to Willie Johnson in the end zone that should have been a touchdown, but he just threw it. He waited too long. Threw it behind him. That would have been a touchdown. But on the flip side of that, he did have that one touchdown that was probably dropped. I mean, it was dropped by Brock Thompson. So that would have been a touchdown. So if you look at all of it and take it all into consideration, yeah, I mean, I think B- is fair, especially given the fact that you can be critical of a lot of the stuff that he did, but he managed to get it done against a very good team. So B-.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd forgotten about the throw to Willie Johnson. If you lead Willie to the sideline a little bit more, that's a touchdown, hands down. And that's going to come along with development. Those throws will eventually become touchdowns. I think that's a fair grade. Offensively as a whole, look, you get 17 points against a really stingy, really good Appalachian State team. You rack up over 300 yards, actually over 350 yards, almost 380 yards of total offense. What do you got for the Herd offense this week?
Yeah, I got a B for the offense this week. I mean, they did a lot of good things. You can't deny that. They ran the ball extremely well against a team that's very good defensively. I mean, you got to be impressed with that. Brendan Knox, a Zeke Elliott type performance. I mean, just feeding the guy. 28 carries. I mean, you love that. 379 total yards. Yeah, that's a pretty good amount there. 163 passing is so-so, but, I mean, it was enough. 7 of 15 on third downs was big. They converted almost 50% of their third downs. They had a very high percentage in third down conversion the first game as well. So they started out the first 2 games being very good on third down. But there was 11 penalties for 117 yards. You don't like to see that because they were so clean in the first game. But, I mean, how many of those penalties would have been called if it was not Big 12 refs? I'm just going to say, probably not all those.
No, probably more if it was CUSA refs, actually.
Oh, it might have been. Big 12 and CUSA refs. Oh, Lord, it don't get much worse. But, no, I mean, some of those penalties were deserved, obviously. I mean, a lot of those penalties, crowd boos and stuff. But, I'm like, no, they deserved that penalty. But some of them were just bad calls. And even though some of those drives stalled out and they didn't score all they could have scored, there were some good long drives that at least milked some time off the clock. Like that one in the fourth quarter where right after App State had the fumble in the end zone, they had about a 6-7 minute long drive. And they didn't put any points on the board, but that ran 6 or 7 minutes off of the clock. And they went all the way down the field. And then even though they went for it on fourth down, which I'll save later for coaching, they went for it on that fourth down. They didn't get it. They put them at the 14-yard line. I mean, that's a good drive. I mean, even though they didn't score, that was a very effective drive, especially when you're up 2 scores to run that time off. So offense did some good things. I would have liked to have seen a few more drives end in more points, but, I mean, when the defense is holding them to 7, you don't need that many more points. So I'm going to give the offense a B.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the specifics on that. That was a 12-play, 66-yard drive that spanned 7 minutes and 38 seconds of the fourth quarter. So you absolutely sealed. That's a game-sealing drive. Even though App State had the ball 2 more times and they did miss the field goal, they went all the way down the field on that drive after the turnover on downs and missed the field goal. Still, that was a game-sealing drive. Defense. Here's the one I want to see where you're at with it because it was absolutely stellar. We've talked about it. They got to the quarterback a trio of times, which is more than on par with the Eastern Kentucky game. Tavante Beckett, stellar. The secondary, stellar. An iconic herd play that will probably go down forever. People will listen to Steve Cotton's play call of Brandon Drayton punching the ball out forever. What do you got for the defense?
In the history of me on this podcast, I've never had a grade this high for a unit. I'm going A++. A++ for the defense. I'm adding another plus onto an A+. That's how good that defense was. A++. Allowing 7 points to that team is unheard of. That won't. I bet my next paycheck that Appalachian State will not score 7 points or fewer in another game this season. That's my opinion. There's no way. And I seen another stat that they put on CBS. I think they said that the last time they've been held to 10 points or fewer was 2013 against Georgia. Against Georgia. And ironically, the quarterback for Georgia, Aaron Murray, was calling the game yesterday. So, I mean, like that's historic. I mean, 7 points allowed, 364 total yards. They held them to 4 of 13 on third down. That's great. I mean, 96 yards rushing, allowed 2.9 yards per carry for App State. I mean, that's, like we said numerous times already, that's a team that ran for over 300 yards the week before against what we perceive as a pretty good Conference USA defense. So, I mean, what more could you ask for? Forced 2 turnovers, and you're right, they weren't just giveaways. They were forced, 150% forced turnovers. The interception by Gilmore, special stuff right there. Gilmore, I was saving this for now. I don't know if I've ever, in my entire time of watching Marshall, I don't know if I've ever seen a game for a certain player like he had in this game. He started out, it was so rough. They were picking on him because they knew he was just going to keep doing pass interferences. They knew what was coming. The quarterback and the game plan was to take advantage of Gilmore. But, man, after that interception, he turned on. It was different. He was just different. In second half, he was all over the receivers. No separation, nothing. He was on them like a shadow. I mean, it was awesome. And then on 1 third down, I remember he batted down a great play on the ball, make an incomplete pass. I mean, I've never seen a player go from so rough to so great in one game. I don't think I've ever seen it like that. Gilmore, what a game he had. That was special. Tavante Beckett, my 200 proof player. I saw that game coming, didn't I? I was thinking maybe 10 to 15 tackles. He had more than that. I mean, What a freaking game for Beckett. And then, like you said, those turnovers, obviously the one was clearly forced because he punched the ball out from behind. That's just not Drayton. I mean, that's just not giving up on the play. That's what happens a lot of players would have just gave up on that play. But he didn't give up on it, and it resulted in essentially the game-sealing turnover. And then, of course, the interception from Gilmore that thwarted their drive at the end of the first half was big as well because they were at least going to get 3 points on that drive, if not more. So defense was special, very special in this game. So A++.
A++ for the first time in history of Trace Johnson's grades, breaking his own rule of nothing higher than an A if you don't have a shutout. That is what the ranked opponent gets you. Special teams, solid all around. We talked about the stats. We talked about Chuchi perfect on kicks, yada, yada, yada. What do you got for the special teams?
Yeah, I got an A for the special teams this week. I mean, very sound game. Very sound, very good game. 1-on-1 on field goals, Chuchi, that was good. 2-2 on PATs. Evans had a couple nice kick returns, even though one only actually resulted in what Marshall wanted, the opening kickoff of the game. I mean, that set the whole tone. That was a big reason why that first drive went as well as it did, because he had that great kickoff return. 38.6 yards per punt by Lefevre. Numbers that won't blow you away, but they weren't needed to blow you away because it was a situation that they were in. He didn't have to have Corey Vedvik 70, 90-yard punts or whatever. He didn't need that. So good game there from him. And the kickoff coverage was really good in this game, and it really made me happy to see it because it was great. This is kind of reminiscent of what they were doing on kickoff coverage for 2 or 3 years ago. It was really good. I mean, like I said, they barely even let them get to the 20 or 25 this game. So special teams really good from top to bottom. I mean, I don't think I could quite give it an A+, but an A for sure.
Well, I mean, there's nothing to argue with. They did their job. They all did their job. And we said that going in the preview. If everybody just does their job, Marshall could come out with a win. And they did. Coaching for this game, look, I'm not even going to lead into it. I'm just going to let you take it away.
I'm giving coaching an A. I mean, what more could you want than you getting a team ready to play, playing well against a top 25 team, and you get to win? I mean, that's literally says it all right there. If you beat a top 25 team, you more than likely are going to get an A in coaching. But it went it went deeper than that. They had a great start. They came out on fire offensively. Very quick drive, took advantage of the short field. You like to see that. They really got the run game spread out well. They gave Knox a lot of carries, which he needed. And then they gave Shelton Evans a lot of carries, quite frankly. I mean, 10 carries for a backup running back's kind of hard to imagine in certain games. So, I mean, they caught a good game there. They came out good. They came out strong after halftime. They played really, really good football in the second half. Appalachian State was down 10-7 at the half. And at that point, you'd think, oh, well, Appalachian State's just going to outcoach Marshall here in the second half and pull it off. But it was the other way around. Marshall's the one that outcoached Appalachian State in the second half. They're the ones that finished strong. Now, I mean, there was a couple of things I didn't like, at least. Like, after Wells threw that first interception, you could tell the play calling got very conservative. They didn't even let him really throw it downfield very much, which, I mean, I understand that. Like, he was shook at that point a little bit, so, like, you kind of understand that. But even at that, I would have liked to have seen them maybe try to get him more into a rhythm quicker. But, I mean, he ended up getting back into a pretty good rhythm. I mean, that 1/3, like we said, the Xavier Gaines was just awesome. Spectacular play that really opened the game up. So he needed that. So, but other than that, like, there's a couple little things like that, couple questionable calls offensively, and they were little too undisciplined for my liking as well. A lot of and especially in that first half, like late hits and stupid stuff like that. I mean, I know they were amped up, and I'm sure App State was talking quite a bit. I mean, you saw that at times, but I mean, that gets teams worked up. But I mean, I would have liked to see a little more discipline, but I don't know if you can necessarily blame the coaching on that in this particular instance. But I mean, you got to give them an A, I think. There's nothing else you can give them.
Yeah, I'm going to have to piggyback off what you said about Tim Cramsey and the interception and how they managed Wells. I think it was kind of needed. And if you'll recall, they did let him throw the ball, but we saw several good chain moving throws that were nice plays. So they eased him back in, but he also wasn't, he had the receivers let him down a little bit. We mentioned Gamage. I'm not trying to piggyback or pile on the guy, but that was a big third down potentially that Marshall couldn't convert because of a drop. So they had a few drops, a few errant throws, but hey, the coaching game plan was phenomenal. Defensively, it was utterly phenomenal. Offensively, I think they did exactly what they needed to do, and that was ride the offensive line in the running game. And it ultimately turned out to be enough. Overall, what do you got for the Herd against Appalachian State?
Overall, I got an A. I mean, I think this is an A game if you've ever seen it. I mean, beating a top 25 team, you could say it was a pretty sound win. Like, they kind of beat them pretty impressively. I mean, it was only scored 17 points, but like that game really should have probably been more lopsided than it ended up being. And that's a testament to how well Marshall played, is they probably should have won that game by, I don't know, 3+ touchdowns. But like, it was just a couple of drives, didn't end up with points, but it was a great win overall. I mean, special teams were very, very good. Offense was pretty good overall. Like, it was serviceable, definitely serviceable. They ran the ball extremely well, milked a lot of the clock out. They were able to put the game away. Only had the one turnover, won the turnover margin, was big. Like I said, Grant Wells came alive more in the second half, especially. You got to like that. Defense was utterly spectacular, utterly phenomenal. I mean, and a lot of my keys to victory, I was just looking back at it to kind of see how they did, and they pretty much met all these criteria. One of the points was stop the Appalachian State rushing attack. Totally did that. The next one was take full advantage of App State mistakes, and for the most part, they did that. They did. I mean, pretty much, even if it wasn't in points, they took advantage of their mistakes because they kept the ball out of their hands and went on good long drives. Sometimes, of course, they did score, but they took advantage of their mistakes. Play calling, I said aggressive play calling. It was, at times, relatively aggressive. At times it wasn't. So that's just kind of okay there. And then I said Wells must shine, and he didn't necessarily shine, but he had a pretty good day overall when you look at everything. So they definitely met most of the criteria I had for those points to victory, and that was a good reason why they won. I mean, it was just a big win. It was just, you can't say it enough. It was a big win. I mean, you love to see it because it hasn't happened in a long time like that. Every time, like I said, every time they got a big game against one of these big-time teams, a Boise State or a Cincinnati or a Pitt or a Louisville or a whoever you want to look at, they lost those games the last few years. Now they got a chance against a ranked elite group of 5 team that lives in 10, 12-win seasons every single year, and you beat that team. That's satisfying. It's very satisfying. Hopefully it's program changing. Hopefully that changes the direction of the program. So, A overall.
A overall. I got no qualms with that. I want to revisit my keys to victory, too, since you brought it up. We both had stop the run and run the ball better than App State, which, of course, they did. My number 2 point was use Xavier Gaines as a weapon, and we saw him line up at quarterback, and we saw him catch passes. We did not see him throw a pass, but he had the big, long pass play that set up the Grant Wells touchdown run. And I'll bring it up again. He had that pass interference call that was down the middle of the field. I thought was kind of critical in moving the chains a little bit and at least flipping the field. I can't recall how that drive ended up, but it was a 15-yard gain that helped flip the field. Number 3, I said they had to get off the field on third down. They held Appalachian State, 3 of 14 on third down, so that was a huge plus. And then number 4, we had to have airtight special teams, and we saw that. We saw airtight special teams up and down the board on all categories. So outside of punt return, which Keaton is always just a move or one freaking guy away from busting it huge. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Yep. Before we get into final thoughts, we had one question. I guess everybody's happy with this herd effort. So this is about a bye week or filling a game in. One of our followers asked us, do you think we could see 2 Moonshine Throwdowns this year, talking about the normal game that's already scheduled for 10-10 and then cramming Western Kentucky on the schedule for this coming Saturday, which as we record this podcast is 6 days away. Both teams are off on September 26th. What do you think? Do you think we see 2 of them in 3 weeks?
I don't know. I remember reading a few weeks ago, or maybe even a couple months ago, that they were. I don't know when it was, but I remember reading something that said Mike Hamrick was saying that they thought they might be able to do a home and home with a conference opponent, but it's off the table now. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I've heard a lot of potential teams that they could play, maybe even next Saturday or this Saturday, whenever you're listening to this podcast. But like, I remember seeing something that said North Carolina had an open date and like Abilene Christian and some other random teams. But I don't know if they'll rush into that right now because they only have a few days to prepare. They would only have a few days to prepare. But it's not inconceivable to think they could end up playing UAB because I saw that UAB has an open date later in the season that matches Marshall's open date. So Marshall and UAB could be a conference championship preview. So that will be a really good game, especially if they get it at the Jones. So, I mean, that's possible, but I don't think they're going to have 2 Moonshine Throwdowns. That's for sure.
Look, the quick, simple, and complete answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Western Kentucky is 0-2, and they need to figure out how to get some things right before they play on October 3rd at Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
And there is zero reason for Western Kentucky to put an extra game on the schedule, especially against a Marshall team that's clicking right now. So it's not going to happen. There's no reason for it to happen. So the quick answer. So you're welcome, big guy. Cooper busted in. He's going to join the podcast here in the late stages. All right, Trace, let's talk about some final thoughts here, and we'll get out of here this week.
Yeah, I mean, this was just a special Saturday for Marshall. I mean, it was honestly a game that was years in the making. Ultimately, it was years in the making. I mean, I think I tweeted, well, I know I tweeted this. I don't think I've been prouder of a Marshall team performance since they won the Conference USA Championship in 2014. I don't think I've been prouder of a team than what I saw yesterday. The grit and toughness and just will to win that they showed was special. And the fact that they had a lot of things going against them, a lot of bad penalties against them, they were put behind the 8 ball in a lot of situations. They just kept grinding, and they proved they were a tougher team than App State, who has a huge reputation as being a tough team. Marshall was tougher. Marshall was better on the offensive line. They were better on the line of scrimmage in the trenches. That's why they won the game. And it was awesome to see that. I mean, like I said, like a lot of those fluky things sometimes have recently gone against Marshall, but they were able to pull it out this time, and that was huge. I mean, it really was. The crowd was great. I was into that game more than I've been into a Marshall home game in a long time. You like to see that enthusiasm back with the fan base now that they're ranked 25th in the AP poll. I mean, that's going to open some eyes. That's going to really open some eyes. I mean, I don't know how long they'll stay in it because, they got to put all those average Big Ten teams in there. But it's great to see them start getting some national respect because they deserve it after the first 2 games. Absolutely deserve it. They've had 2 very big games network-wise. They had an ESPN game, the game immediately after College Game Day, and then they had the 3:30 CBS game. Like, that was, other than the 7:30 or 8 o'clock ABC game, the 3:30 CBS game is the best time slot of Saturday college football, in my opinion. And Marshall was on it. I'm going to be really interested to see how many people watched it. I mean, it was a game that a lot of people were looking forward to yesterday. I mean, other than Miami and Louisville, that was a game that some people said maybe the second biggest game of the day. So, I mean, I'm sure people watched it, and obviously a lot of people watched it because they got ranked in the top 25. So, a lot of those voters saw it. They saw the defense, how great it was. They saw Brendan Knox and the O-line, how great they are. So, really good day. Really big day for the program. Hopefully they can keep building on it. Hopefully this isn't just the highest that they get this season. Hopefully they keep building on it and get to that championship level.
Yeah. Look, final thoughts this week for me are pretty simple. If you're Marshall, you do not want to really go 2 weeks without playing because you got something working. You don't want any of that rust to lay in. You want to keep getting hit. You want to keep hitting. So, a game getting canceled for this Saturday, okay, not a big deal. But now if I'm Mike Hamrick, I think I'm trying to find somebody for October 3rd, even if it's another cream puff to come to Huntington and play, because I think you just want somebody on the schedule to keep the momentum running. I don't know that will happen, but if you've got to toss a few extra bucks that you may or may not have to keep momentum high in what could be a special season, you might need to do that. Like I said, I don't know if they'll be able to, but reach out to somebody. I don't know who would be available, but somebody out there might want to come just, take a whooping for a paycheck. We talked about the 2 Moonshine Throwdowns probably not going to be playing, but I will say this. There will definitely be one on 10-10. And for those of you who have forgotten, that is Western Kentucky's homecoming. They decided to, once Old Dominion fell off the schedule, they decided to change the Moonshine Throwdown to homecoming. So adds to the mystique. And if things go, stay on the same trajectory for the next couple of weeks, the Toppers will be hosting a top 25 Marshall team for homecoming in a game that is going to be, highly contested. It doesn't really matter. Outside of 2016, these games have always been tight, and that's what you like to see in a rivalry game. Of note, I will be making the trip to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and it will be awesome because every time I go to Bowling Green, Kentucky, it is awesome. So for those of you folks that are going to the game, be on the lookout because I'll be there. I love interacting with folks. I like meeting new people. So if you see me around, even if I'm in a mask and you're not sure it's me, say hi anyway. And the last thing I want to talk about is we did launch the Moonshine Throwdown scholarship campaigns. And if you haven't seen the videos or haven't seen me tweet about it, really what we're trying to do is endow athletic scholarships at Marshall and at Western Kentucky. And I know some folks are like, look, man, I can't give a lot of money. I just assume, retweet or like the tweets and all that good stuff. And that's great. But likes and retweets aren't going to help us endow a scholarship. So look, if you want to be a part of something that lasts forever and ever and ever, then give us $5, give us $10. I don't care if you can't donate a lot. That's not what I'm after. This is aimed at the everyday average fan that wants to kick a few bucks in and be a part of something big. That's all it is. We're trying to do some good since Marshall and Western lost so much revenue, and we're trying to turn this into a little bit of a rivalry thing. I want to see whose fan base will come to the forefront quickest and endow a scholarship. So help us fill those. I mean, a one-time donation of $5, $10, $20, whatever you want to give. I don't care what it is, because every dollar literally gets us one step closer to 25 grand. So that one-time donation is going to endow a scholarship that could essentially live on for decades and decades and decades. Now, I know a lot of you are already season ticket holders. You're already giving to the Big Green or the Hilltopper Athletic Foundation, and that's great. We don't want you to stop doing that. What I'm asking you for is an extra $5, an extra $10, a cup of coffee, a fast food lunch, whatever you want to call it, however you want to equate it. Send a donation. What do you got to lose? Everything is set up through GoFundMe. It's completely safe and secure. The funds are 100% untouchable until the goal is met, and GoFundMe will then electronically send the funds directly to the Big Green or the Hilltopper Athletic Foundation. I have absolutely no access. Nobody has any access to any donation you make except when the goal is met, GoFundMe sends it directly to those entities. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to be afraid of. So be a part of something cool, something that will live on forever. And in 20 years from now, when we're paying out a partial scholarship to some student that needs it, you can say, hey, I remember when I gave $5 to that 20 years ago. And here it is still around. This is a great time. Marshall's a top 25 team. If you got $25, donate it to the Moonshine Throwdown scholarship campaigns. What other reason do you want? I mean, this is something really positive and really good that we're trying to do. So help us do that. Don't play wait and see. Don't wait until somebody else makes a donation and then you decide to do it. Maybe somebody else will because you did. So help us out. Let's do this. The links are all around on social media. I try to tweet them out all the time, but I don't want to overwhelm people and get them numb to what we're trying to do. But it's there. Go to GoFundMe and search Marshall Moonshine Throwdown. Search Western Kentucky or WKU Marshall or WKU Moonshine Throwdown scholarships. They're there. Make the quick donations and be done with it and help us spread the word. So until next week, Trace, I guess we don't have a game to preview until now. We might not have one for a couple of weeks until we preview the Moonshine Throwdown. So I guess for potentially a couple weeks, take us out.
Go Herds, number 25.
Go Tops. We'll get the ship righted. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned. I hope Stephen and I can link up and we'll get you a Liberty wrap up and a preview coming up for maybe Middle Tennessee since the Tops are going into a bye week. But it's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.